Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to the podcast here. We've got episode 3, and we are excited to have Dr. Brian Chan as our guest here today. Dr. Chan is a well-known expert in our field. I think it's fair to call you an entrepreneur now too. I mean, you've got a lot of irons in the fire.
Just a few.
Yeah, that's right, and a few more on deck, I'm sure. But just about everybody that's within our field knows who you are. But for those who might be listening and don't yet know who you are, you want to give yourself just a nice intro and share with the audience who you are and what you're about and where you came from and where you're going?
Yeah, that sounds good. So professionally trained as a chiropractor. I finished my chiropractic training in 2002 and started practicing here in Washington State in 2003. Full-time active practice for the first 10 years of my career. I still have 4 chiropractic clinics in the South, Seattle and South, Seattle, Bellevue, and south of there. We offer chiropractic, massage, physical therapy, acupuncture services. But that was really the first decade of my career as a chiropractor. I had an opportunity in the late 2009, 2010 period to make a little bit of a shift. And really it came about because my father, I'm a second generation chiropractor, my father passed away in 2008, and it had a little bit of a moment where I had to define what I was going to do with the rest of my career. My father was a physicist, and he loved seeing patients. He loved testifying in court.
Yeah.
And he was good at it, like he would always go to trial and come back and say, oh yeah, a juror contacted me and wants to come and be a patient. And he just loved educating.
Amazing.
It was really fantastic what he was able to do with his career. I have 4 clinics. He had 7 chiropractic clinics.
I didn't know that until now.
He was just, he was an entrepreneur, and he loved that aspect of it. Yeah. And, for myself, after my father passed away, I had to figure out what to do. And I knew that I couldn't be a physicist. I couldn't go back to school and get a PhD in physics. But I decided to try and figure out a way to reinvent the wheel, and part of that was getting more training to be a different, not just a chiropractor, but to add to that my repertoire of what I could offer to patients and to attorneys.
Yeah, what a way to honor your father.
Thank you.
So you started like a biomechanical expert type of practice, right?
That's correct.
Tell the audience a little bit about that and what that entails for those who don't know.
Yeah, so what happened is when I was in practice, there were instances where I would get a call from a patient or a law firm saying, hey, unfortunately the insurance company has been really difficult. And they have said that they've hired an expert, and they'd say it was an engineer. And they'd say, well, we've hired an engineer, and the engineer said the patient couldn't get injured. And that frustrated me. I said, I've been seeing patients for a decade now. I'm seeing these patients. They are patients that were not lying. These are school teachers. These are honorable people that are just trying to get back to their normal lives.
Exactly.
And it was really frustrating to see that. And I thought, well, now this insurance company is telling me how this patient wasn't injured. And I would read this report, and it didn't really make sense to me. And I was like, I need to learn more. And so I enrolled in some coursework. One of them was with Dr. Art Croft, well-known chiropractic researcher, epidemiologist out of San Diego. Yeah. And I went through his coursework and started to see the options that were available to help my patients. Yeah. And I finished, it took about a year to finish his coursework, like 4 different weekends. And I asked him, I said, Dr. Croft, if I want to take it to the next level, what should I do? And he was like, you have to go to Chicago. I said, what's in Chicago? Northwestern University has the #1 training program where they train law enforcement, engineers, and the public that wants to learn how to reconstruct car crashes. These are the people that when a car crash happens and they close the road down, this is the team that shows up on site to measure the skid marks, takes the photos, and ultimately writes a report to explain to whoever what happened here, who hit who.
Right, how this all went down when there could be 5, 6, 8 vehicles involved, right?
That's correct. Yeah. And so learning that you start with, it's really a 3-week course, and you learn about the physics. Then you learn how to look at photographs. You learn to look at the roadway damage, the skid marks, the gouges in the pavement to determine where the point of maximum engagement, the first impact was, and then backing it up. What did we skid over? Gravel, grass, all of that can put together to see what speed a vehicle was coming in. And And then we know if someone was speeding, who might be at fault.
Right.
All those things come together.
So in a rare instance, it's one of those deals where you would start at the end to tell the story kind of backwards, right?
That's
Is that
correct.
fair?
Every
Yeah.
time we do reconstruction, we start with where the vehicle's resting.
Right.
That's the final point of rest, and we move backwards to see prior to impact how fast were they going.
That is so neat.
Yeah.
And it probably defeats a lot of the insurance arguments when they might say, well, hey, we don't see a whole lot here that we believe could have caused an injury. And you're able to go in and find out what really happened, what speeds they might have been impacted at, and show scientifically that an injury can and does occur at those speeds, right?
Yeah, well, for me, I started with reconstruction, looking at the vehicles, but my world is clinical,
Yeah.
knowing what happens to the occupant. And through some training and through some of my own crash testing where I had volunteers, healthy volunteers instrumented,
Yeah.
and then put them in controlled crashes to see how they moved, the whole picture began to come into play.
Yeah.
Now, here's a little secret. I studied accident reconstruction, and I wasn't really sure what I'd get out of it.
Yeah.
What I learned was most of the cases we see in the clinic, they are in crashes that didn't have a lot of damage.
Right.
Where there's a lot of damage, it's clear that someone could get hurt. Where they don't have damage, it is a big question mark that the insurance companies like to challenge. And what I had learned through my reconstruction training is that it's easy to do a reconstruction if there's lots of damage. If we can measure the front end of this car collapsed by 12 inches, we can actually there's a long physics formula. We can look up the stiffness values depending on the location on the vehicle. We can plug it into the formula and we can figure out the energy it took to crush that vehicle. We can then work backwards to determine at what velocity would it take to cause this type of damage, what we call the delta V.
Right.
But what you and I are dealing with often are collisions where there isn't that type of damage.
You bet, yeah. And from a layman's perspective, or perhaps, of course, the jaded insurance industry, they look at that and they say, hey, you probably just got tapped, right? As you're pulling through the McDonald's drive-through, or, some very low speed impact. And because the vehicle isn't badly damaged, the person couldn't have been hurt, right?
That's correct. And in fact, it plays on the biases that we as humans carry,
Yeah.
that if it doesn't look bad, if there's not a lot of damage, you can't get hurt by that. So I can understand why the insurance company is going to try and play to that bias.
Sure. But what do you find usually?
Well, I don't want to get too deep into it, but essentially, if we can break it down to two types of collisions, there's what we call a plastic collision or an elastic collision.
Okay.
A plastic collision would be a collision where there's lots of damage. Think of a semi-truck striking a vehicle, and there's lots of damage on that vehicle it strikes.
Yeah.
And then you think about the crash where two cars bounce off each other. Those are called elastic, where they're very bouncy.
Sure.
They're essentially one car hits the other, the one bounces away.
Yeah.
The problem is the occupant inside that car gets thrown around, and that's where someone can be injured.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is the point that we need to relay to everybody that's in the public, or, even some insurance adjuster who might be tuning in on this, is that people are getting hurt in these everyday occurring type accidents.
Rob, I should mention that just because you're in a car crash doesn't guarantee the fact that you're injured.
Sure.
It just puts the potential there based on physics. If there's movement, there's an injury potential.
That's right.
And so the clinical component is still very important.
So one of the other hats that you wear is as the director of Seattle Spine and Sports Medicine and its affiliates, right? And as a physiatry practice. So for those who don't know, what is physiatry?
Yeah, physiatry is the word that's describing what we call physical medicine and rehabilitation. These are trained physicians. Once they finish medical school, they would enter into a physical medicine and rehabilitation residency, similar to orthopedics, similar to neurology, primary care. These are all specialty that someone would go into residency for. And so after medical school, one would match and see if they get accepted to go into a physical medicine and rehabilitation, or what we call PMR residency. These physicians are the space between surgery and initial conservative care. So patient gets injured or has back pain, they start with conservative treatment options. It could be chiropractic, massage, acupuncture, physical therapy. Say that they're still not getting better. One option is surgery, but often surgery is not there's nothing to operate on.
That's right.
And so then the space between is where PMR physicians reside.
That's right.
We're looking at doing potentially injections of steroids. At our PMR practice, we're really looking at regenerative options like PRP, drawing the patient's own blood, spinning it, and injecting the healing growth factors back into an injured joint to allow them to heal.
Amazing. Amazing. And so you know, for the patient who comes to us or the client that comes in our office and says, hey, this isn't working, PT is not working, or massage, or maybe even chiropractic, but I don't want to have surgery, the best place for them to be seen then is in your office, right?
That's correct. And in fact, if it's a surgeon that's doing it properly, they won't consider surgery until they've had them come into a PMR practice, where we're looking at those additional options to help them feel better.
Is it fair to think of this in terms of sending a case or a patient or client up the food chain? That someone should start conservative chiropractic massage if that's not working, or if their symptoms aren't totally resolved, they should be sent to a practice like yourself. Or your own, and then maybe have some advanced imaging, see what's there. And then if that isn't working, perhaps they should go up to the surgeon, but not before, right?
Yeah, that's correct. You know, in my chiropractic office, I would occasionally order MRIs, but the question is, what do you do with the results of the imaging?
Right.
And so often clinicians, chiropractors included, would say, well, why order the imaging unless it's going to lead to how I do things differently in my clinical practice?
Sure.
So in that case, I was blessed in my career with always working with Seattle Spine. They've been in Seattle since 2002 or 2003, and I started practicing in 2003. And so I've had my whole career a teammate in Seattle Spine. Dr. Richard Ceruzzi is a medical director. He is a fantastic physician.
Sure is.
He actually has a master's degree in mechanical engineering, and so he's got a great background, and he's always worked very positively as a teammate with chiropractors. He respects what we do. And so I've always had that in my career, and when the opportunity came up to help serve the chiropractic community and helping them help their patients, I thought what a perfect opportunity to work with Dr. Ceruzzi and helping expand and open different locations in the different chiropractic communities in the area.
Beautiful. No, I couldn't agree more. And for those chiropractors to have referral outlets that are near their patients and easy to work with, and the ability to have a relationship with you and discuss things about patients or get answers or ask questions, that's a phenomenal asset to the entire community. Everyone who treats injured people, and of course the injured people themselves, and law firms like my own.
I'm glad you see that. In the most common thing I hear when I meet a new chiropractor is, oh, I didn't know there's an option of where I could refer a patient out to. Our community, unfortunately, because of some historical context, has really been on an island. And that can be a challenge. I've been out to the communities like Port Angeles, and Lacey, Olympia, and some of these, Yelm, and some of these communities where there are just not a lot of options. Chiropractors, we love our patients. We do anything to help them. And there are instances where it would be great to work together with a teammate, but sometimes when we refer out, it may be a primary care doctor or orthopedic surgeon who then says, oh, first thing I need you to do is stop seeing the chiropractor.
Right, right.
And interestingly, I've never met a physician who, say a physiatrist, I actually use this as an example when I interview our physiatrists that we look at hiring. I say, hey, when you see a patient, do you manage their cardiology medication? And they say, no, I would never do that. And I would say, well, that's the same thing. How do you work with chiropractors? And they say, well, I guess I don't really know frequency. And I say, well, yeah, exactly. We want to respect the professions that we work with and allow them to make that decision on what's necessary for their patients.
Yep. And I think it really helps for that injured person who never wanted this to happen in the first place to have that support around them, to be reminded that they're the victim in this. They need to prioritize their health, and to have a team around them that insulates them from all of the nitty-gritty, unpleasant parts of this case, usually namely working with the insurance company or against the insurance company. So I see it as, you have the chiropractor, yourself, and then the attorney. Hopefully we're lucky enough to be that office and serve that patient and client, but everyone kind of working for the benefit of that injured person to help bring them back to life.
Yeah, in one of the hats I wear as a forensic expert, I testify in trials and arbitrations, and I've done a couple dozen depositions. These are not on my own patient cases. These are where an insurance company or a law firm will reach out to me, retain me, and ask me to review the case. one of the consistent things I've seen as I've reviewed over 200 cases now is I've seen that there are many communities where the chiropractor, massage therapists have done amazing work trying to help this patient, but then they have nowhere to send the patient.
Right.
Frustrating for them. And I kept on seeing the same thing and thinking to myself, this patient would have been better served if they had additional options. And that really drove us to open now in Olympia, Puyallup, Renton, Everett. We're looking at Gig Harbor later on this year. We're really just trying to get out in the community and let our fellow chiropractors know that we have a good option to support their care.
Just amazing stuff. Amazing stuff. So you're going to be one of our key presenters at the Personal Injury Summit, which is going down in just a few weeks at T-Mobile Park, June 3rd. It's going to be the best continuing education and party event that the chiropractic and medical community has ever seen. We guarantee it. Do you want to give the audience just a brief preview of what you're going to speak about at the PI Summit?
Yeah, this has now been my world. Personal injury, helping individuals who've been injured in a car accident has been everything I've focused on for the past 15 years. And I've learned a lot of lessons as an expert witness and as a treating chiropractic clinician. And I want to share what I've learned that I think will really help the chiropractic community. My topic will be mechanisms of injury in whiplash cases. And I think it's important because often the insurance company, who often challenges if someone was even injured, they start with challenging that there was a mechanism of injury. Right. They say, listen, Dr. Smith, I see you treat this patient for a year and you believe you really helped the patient. However, we don't believe anyone was injured in this. Yeah. And it puts us in a bit of an awkward place. And I think that chiropractors have the training and the ability to identify the mechanisms of injury. So my hope is to go over some of the literature and explain what we've seen, not just in clinical practice, but in epidemiologic research, looking at prospective and retrospective studies, and what does that look like? What do we see when a patient gets in a car crash? What does the literature show us in terms of their future prognosis, their ability to fully recover? What are the injuries we're seeing? And so I'm going to take a little bit of accident reconstruction, going to talk just a little bit about physics, enough that hopefully the clinician doesn't get scared off, that they actually can have an important role in helping show how the patient was injured, not just through their clinical exam, but through doing a couple key steps of accident reconstruction that really makes it easier for the patient to be able to prove that they were hurt.
I'm so excited for you to empower these chiropractors to be able to get their cases off on the right foot from the very get-go. I mean, you've talked about some things that folks should or shouldn't incorporate maybe into their initial intake paperwork, and then how they treat and how they refer. And I'm just excited to see our entire community advance because of some of the nuggets of wisdom that you're going to pass down.
Well, not long ago, I had said that my hope is that I'm out of business as a forensic expert. When I'm hired, it means that the case is towards the end, and they need to bring on me to do a review to provide additional opinions. My hope is that if clinicians can improve on a few things, that no insurance company or no law firm will need to hire me. They'll just talk with a treating doctor who has now addressed all of these questions and have done really a fantastic job at it. So that really is my hope with this.
Man, I love that. Anything that's going to help our community and our injured people come out on top, be able to get the care that they need and that they deserve to return to pre-accident condition and really recover their life, their health, and their wealth, as our phrase goes in the office. And just to remind themselves that, they are the victim here. They're caught in a very unfortunate circumstance. We hear it all the time that, hey, the person that hit me was a really nice person. I'm sure they want to do the right thing. And I tell our clients, I'm sure you're right. Unfortunately, there's an insurance company that's in the middle, preventing that right thing from being done unless things are laid out the right way. And I'm just so excited to hear you break that down for the audience.
Well, that's the first part. And the second thing we'll be doing at the end of the day, which is going to be really exciting, we'll be putting on a mock trial. Yeah. And that will be a lot of fun. I mean, it'll be about an hour long, so it's not going to be a full trial, but I think it'll help the treating provider, physical therapist, chiropractor know how the way they ask a question might help or harm an individual's ability to get fair resolution to their case.
Yeah.
They're the blind spots. And we've looked through cases I've done, and I know that some of the fantastic litigation attorneys at your firm, we've met together to discuss what are the things that we could learn. If we could improve, what are they? And we hope to show that in the format of a mock trial.
I couldn't agree more. You know, I think largely our communities, being the medical and the legal, need to work as closely as possible as we can to help these people, kind of form a team around them and understand what each other are saying. So I'm just so thrilled that you're a part of this, that you're presenting. Shout out to Seattle Spine and Sports Medicine. We could not be doing this without them. They are our platinum sponsor for the summit. They are our choice for all physiatry and secondary care referrals, and I'm just so thrilled that you're going to be there that day, and I can't wait to see this whole thing go down.
Thank you so much. When you asked if we'd be willing to be supportive, anything we can do to reach out to the community. I mean, it's frustrating, and I still hear it every time I sit down and meet with the new chiropractor. I just hear the same thing. I didn't know that there was any options, so I've just been on my own.
Yep. We hear the same thing sometimes from these offices who say, you know, why would I want to refer to a personal injury lawyer? Don't you guys just go, you know, create problems, or, you know, aren't you guys ambulance chasers? And the reality is that those patients that have been validly and actually injured because of these collisions are already within the chiropractor's offices. And there's a whole other side of these cases that's going on that the chiropractor may not be aware of. You know, the phone calls late at night, you know, the missed wages, the stresses with the family of being uncertain about how they're going to be able to pay for the next month mortgage, or, you know, the husband or father who's unable to go work or play baseball with his son. And so we believe, as strong as can be, that these are real, genuine, salt of the earth people that we can really help. And I'd remind everybody that when we win a case, it's not just a huge settlement for a client. It's that person they've had their health restored. They've been able to get all the care they need to reach pre-accident condition. And that's a happy story for us, because long after any settlement is here or gone, the patient is going to be left with their body. And so we need to make sure that we do the best job possible of taking care of that.
I don't often get to hear the end results. I just go and testify, or I write a report, or do an IME, and then I don't know what happens. But I don't know if I've met anyone that has said, you know, I'm going to feel great if I can get this amount of money. No one chooses to go through this process. I mean, it just takes years, and it's affected their life in a way that, unfortunately, not always. We know the literature shows that a large percentage, 40 to 60%, have some level of chronicity after a car crash. There's no amount of money that can make that go away. That's just something they'll have to deal with. So I'm happy to hear, working with you now for 5 or 6 years, Rob, in different, as a clinician, as a chiropractor, and now as medical, and also as just someone that does expert witness work. I know that your team fights. I mean, I've been so impressed. There are different types of law firms out there. There's ones that just do a lot of advertising, and they're just there to really turn over a case. And there are law firms that hire a team. I get asked this a lot. Chiropractors say, well, how do I choose? There's so many attorneys out there. How do I choose? I say, well, let me give you the first step. The first step is ask the law firm if they litigate. And what I mean by that is not that they send it out to someone else, but do they actually have a team on staff that's fighting for the best results for their clients, our patients. And your team, I mean, how many litigation attorneys do you have now?
We're up to 8 or 9 here probably by the time this week is over.
That's fantastic. That's a testament of what you've built, the vision that you have.
I appreciate it. It's really the confidence the community has had in us, and then the medical community in general, to be able to trust us with their patients. And we couldn't be more honored to do that job, because we know that a referral either reflects positively or negatively on the person that's making it. And that's something that we take more seriously than anyone. So we're blessed to be able to serve, and we're just so excited about the growth that we've been able to achieve together. Dr. Brian Chan, thanks so much for being on our podcast. We appreciate you, and we can't wait to see where life takes us.
Thank you so much, Rob.
Thank you.